I waited over 15 minutes when he was finally ushered into the conference room. I'd met him once or twice before, at staff Christmas parties and the like, when his wife would bring him, but he never really stuck out in my mind, so I can't say I really remember him. Looking at him, I realized that there was something vaguely disturbing about him. He was wearing a custom-made cloth suit that must have cost a cool $5,000. It wasn't as small as I thought, but it wasn't too big either. He seemed neither young nor old. He was neither meek nor soft, as I first thought, but he was not threatening either. I expected him to be shocked, maybe intimidated, but he didn't seem stunned, perhaps slightly surprised. But there was no amusement in his eyes when I looked at them. Taking a closer look at his face for the first time, I realized that it looked strange, perhaps threatening, or maybe just a little angry. And they were gray, not blue or green or hazel or brown, but slate gray. The anger was only there for a second, and quickly disappeared. For some reason, perhaps instinctively, I realized that maybe things weren't going to go the way we expected. I wanted to try to remain professional at least as much as I could, considering the reason we were here was because his wife was having sex with my boss, and our firm was representing her in a divorce. I didn't like doing this, but I knew that doing a good job here would go a long way toward getting my boss's support at the next partners' meeting, and I was willing to destroy this man if necessary. I was slightly surprised that he agreed to the meeting, and even more surprised when he showed up alone, without a lawyer. Mr. Smith, as you know, we are representing your wife in her divorce suit against you. We thought maybe we could come to some kind of agreement privately instead of fighting this in court. Are you sure you don't want a lawyer present? He just looked at me politely. No need, he said. There's really nothing to dispute here. There were only 2 of us in the conference room. He and I, his wife, decided not to attend the meeting, at least at first. Do you mind if I record the meeting? I asked him. Of course, be so kind, he said, taking a small object from his pocket, which I assumed was his own voice recorder, and placing it on the table. Okay, first of all, the financial report you gave us is completely inadequate. You do not list any assets, house, car, bank accounts. Nothing is listed here. He just sat and looked at me. You don't have an answer? Sorry, was that a question? It sounded like a statement that did not require an answer. Why isn't the house imported to the list of assets? In this area, they start at $5 million and grow quickly. The house doesn't belong to me, it belongs to a friend. I just live there. Your wife was under the impression that he belonged to you. She said she was with you when they bought it. Yeah, well, I was under the impression that she was in love with me, and we can see how that turned out. It seems that we were both under the influence of a series of false impressions. You understand, Mr. Smith, that concealing assets is a crime. And if you file this financial statement in response to our complaint and it turns out to be false, you will be prosecuted. He didn't seem worried at all. I always watch my eyes in any negotiations, and for that matter, his eyes returned to their slightly surprised expression. I almost got the impression that he enjoyed it. I guess Jim, by the way, can I call you Jim? Yes. Okay, I'm assuming you researched the owner using court records and found that the house was owned by a corporation. This corporation is owned by a friend of a friend who allows me to stay in the house. So, as you can see, this is not my property. Yes. We checked. The house is owned by a shell company, which is owned by a shell company, which is owned by another. We haven't traced it all the way yet, but I'm willing to bet that at some point we'll be able to trace it back to you. You know, if I were a bettor, I would be happy to take your money. I think if you trace back far enough, you'll find that a friend of mine is a retired, older gentleman who bought it for investment reasons. And could you tell me his name? Actually, no, I don't know that. I'm sure if you put in enough time and resources, you can track him down, but try not to irritate him while doing so. It was never a good idea, but I know he lives in Colombia. He let the word hang there. People from Colombia who have $5 million to $10 million to buy a house for someone else should never be annoyed. Okay, let's leave the house for now. What about cars? Your wife lists 14 different cars, including 2 Rolls, a Bentley, 3 Shelby Mustangs, a Jaguar XK120, and an assortment of what she calls everyday cars, including a Ferrari. And yet, I don't see any of this in the list of assets. In fact, if my wife bothered to check, I don't have a single car. Again, they are all owned by different corporations, and I am just the caretaker. I ride them and take full advantage of them. But I don't really own them. To be honest, she never really checked anything. She is easily distracted by beautiful trinkets, gourmet cuisine, beautiful clothes. As long as we went to the best restaurants and she had a cook to cook and a maid to clean, she was happy. But they are all employees just like me, and she's easy to distract. Let's talk about your work. You eat at the best restaurants, drive a Mercedes, Bentley, or Ferrari. Your suit looks tailored, and the suit alone must cost over $5,000, yet you report an income of $64,000. Do you seriously think that I will believe this? A bit like my wife's impressions, I am not responsible for your beliefs. She has her opinion, you have yours. But to me, I'm just a simple caretaker. Your wife says that you travel quite often on business. She says you've been away for a few days to a week at irregular intervals. What type of caretaker travels so frequently on business? Always first class, I take it. And it's just a matter of $64,000, isn't it? But the question for you is, do you really want the answer? His eyes hardened and the amusement disappeared. Suddenly, I didn't need an answer, and I wanted nothing to do with this sad matter. But my course was set, and I couldn't change it now. If I want to, maybe not, but my client and my boss will insist that I get it. Fair enough. You are the mediator here, aren't you? So I'll give you some friendly advice. Before this is all over, the damage will be done, and unless you want to become so-called collateral damage, I suggest you take a vacation. Several weeks of vacation may be required. Have you ever seen a cat play with a mouse? What? The cat is playing with the mouse. Be careful. You see, the cat knows what the mouse is going to eat. Even the mouse figures it out eventually, but the cat keeps letting it run away, and the mouse keeps running away. Even if the mouse knows it is dead, it still tries to stay alive. But this never happens. What does this have to do with your work? His eyes suddenly hardened. No, not a stone. The stone is not cold enough. I even felt the cold in the room. I'm just getting to this point. You see, I work for an interesting group of businessmen in a related and competing business. Sometimes they compete, and sometimes they cooperate and form alliances. Together they form what I guess you would call a cartel. Nowadays, on a fairly regular basis, people appear who, for one reason or another, need to be taken care of. Those that ordinary people cannot take care of for one reason or another. Too protected, too visible, too dangerous for the average caretaker. So they use my services. I care about people who need care, like your boss. He needs to be taken care of. He is a mouse who has not yet realized that he is already dead and is simply allowed to run around the room a little. Do you understand that I am recording this? I said. Listen, please. What? He pointed to the recorder. Listen, he repeated. I clicked stop, made a backup after a few minutes or so, and clicked play. White noise was coming from the built-in speaker. He picked up the device he had previously placed on the table. Convenient, isn't it? Jams all VCRs and audio devices within a 500-foot radius. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out an envelope and handed it to me. This is a death certificate, duly executed. John Smith died and left no inheritance, so there is no need for a divorce. The body was cremated. She won't get anything. Tell her to run away from me. I won't look for her. I don't have much feelings left for her. But if I bump into her, she'll die. She has 12 hours to bury herself somewhere. Tell your boss that he is a mouse, and the cat is playing with him. When the cat is finished, he will die. He can run, he can try to hide, but he is already dead. If she is with him when I come for him, she will die with him. Tell him that if he makes it easy for me, I will do it quickly, but if he resists, I will do it slowly and painfully. Tell him that I hope he has the courage to try to fight, as I prefer to do it slowly and painfully. I suggest you take this week off. Hardly will it take longer. He stood up, shook my hand, and left. I told my boss and his girlfriend everything he said. The death certificate was legal. He was a ghost. She turned pale and ran away, and we never saw her again. I went to the Cape for a week, and when I came back, I had a new boss. It looks like the previous one was slowly fried to death in a terrible car accident. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.